amazing panelists. Before we get into it, we do have a birthday. So everyone tell Sergio happy birthday.
I want you on my birthday, Harry. Sorry, but think about it. Talk about loyalty. I mean,
we'll do a round of happy birthday at the end. Would you each mind telling us a bit about yourselves, your role, your company, what you do? If you want to start, Garrett.
Yeah, happy to kick things off. My name is Garrett Wood. I am the CEO of GetScale. We offer recruiting as a service for the gig economy. The core of our business is using one-on-one conversations to connect, educate, and motivate people to get started with new learning opportunities. So, real conversations give us a really interesting lens into the unique challenges, concerns, motivations, desires, and also gives us an opportunity to educate workers on how to be successful. How do I deliver to apartments? Where do I park? How do I know it's the right person getting into my vehicle? To date, we've had close to 20 million conversations with prospective workers. We listen carefully and excited to share some of the things that they've told us.
Well, thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Michel from Ualett, More Than a Cash Advance. I am the CEO of this dream. I say dream because we are a group of believers. 6 years ago, we created the first platform that offers specific cash advance for a specific industry, the rideshare industry. And after the pandemic, we become like a more bigger platform that introduced new products for gig workers, the delivery world that is huge right now, and we create a different model. We provide micro cash advance or alternative lending to them using their account receivables. We don't do credit report. We don't think that's the most important thing for a rideshare, for a gig worker. It's how many hours they work for, which company they work with, the demographic. So when we combine everything, there are most of the most important workers in the United States. And we believe in them, and they trust in us. And that's how we build Ualett, More Than a Cash Advance.
I oversee government affairs and communications for Revel. We're a New York City-based company. We operate an all-electric rideshare service in New York City, and kind of even more exciting than that, we are building out large-scale fast charging sites designed to meet the needs of dense urban environments and rideshare drivers. If you live in a city, you likely to lack access to at-home charging. A large portion of the vehicles on the road every day are transporting people and goods. And so every moment you're charging translates into lost revenue. So what we're seeking to do is design large-scale sites where off-street, where you can get a charge, the fastest charging speeds, even if it's at capacity, you're not going to be waiting that long. And for us, that's really the trick to accelerate EV adoption. And because so many of these lane miles are traveled by rideshare drivers, we really look to put these stations where drivers live and work. And so we're currently operating New York City's most extensive network of fast charging sites, and we will be in San Francisco later this year, followed by LA, Chicago, and Boston.
hey everyone, thank you for showing up. Harry, thank you for putting this together for the 4th or 5th year. So I'm Sergio Avedian. I'm the senior contributor / jack of all trades for the Rideshare Guy. We are the largest blog, podcast, YouTube channel in the country when it comes to everything and anything about the gig economy. And I host a weekly live stream called Show Me the Money Club, which makes drivers hopefully more efficient and probably teach them how not to be loyal to make more money. Besides that, I think this is a great panel for me because I've learned over the last 8 years. I've been an Uber for 8, Lyft for 7, and now I have literally plethora of apps on my phone. As an independent contractor, to me there is no loyalty. I turn them all on, My time is for sale to the highest bidder, and that's where I'm going to go. But I'm sure Jessica's going to have some great questions about that.
Thank you. So I always like to set the scene when I'm moderating, so I'm curious who here does gig work or has done gig work. Okay, and who here works with gig workers? Okay, so it's a very involved audience. So you definitely know all of what we're going to be talking about today. But I think to start, I'd love to talk a bit about what have the traditional benefits been for gig workers. I'm thinking of the early days when Lyft had the mustaches and you could get an Uber for $3. Maybe Sergio, if you want to start with that.
Yeah, initially there was some loyalty from the companies because they were in the growth phase and they were putting out obviously ridiculous incentives to onboard as many new drivers and riders as possible. Those days I call it the fantasy, subsidized fantasy land because they were spending VC money, in the billions to reach certain scale, and they have successfully done that. But those initial days, I miss those days. I would get out, turn my app on, the platform is reasonably working well. There'll be chip after chip. In order for me to take a break, I literally had to wait for the pings to slow down for me to do that, and I would make literally, per online hour, 60, 70, sometimes depending on bonuses, $80 an hour, which to me is incredible amount of money for doing something simple as driving a person from point A to point B safely. But things have changed quite a bit, and I was loyal to Uber initially, then added Lyft. But now, due to obviously pay cuts and they reach certain scale, incentives have gone away. Now I have to look out for myself more than anything else, and that's why I'm on 6 or 7 different apps these days.
Yeah, for the majority of the workers we talk to, it really comes down to 3 things: pay, flexibility, and then environment. But the 4th factor, I think is often understated, is speed to paycheck. You can get started often the same day. And in a world where people have medical expenses, they want to go on vacation, they need to fix their car, the first paycheck often beats the best paycheck. And I think speed to earning is another huge factor that pulls people into the gig economy.
Yeah, in our case, when we get to the industry, as Sergio says, everything was changing. Before, they had a lot of prices like rewards, overpaying, presents, whatever. When we get to the industry, it was a big hole in between how much they earn and how many times against how the time they work. So we get them practically solution. We say, okay, let's put in the middle your receivables, and let's give you time, quickness, and service. We are a tech, but we call ourselves as a human tech. We don't forget about a driver needs to speak with someone. They've been 12 hours outside alone, just working for a kind of revenue. In our service as Ualett, we give them the cash advance in less than 5 minutes, and they have 24/7 service from customer support that make them a loyalty client, not just as a driver. I want to give you this example. Many of our drivers, at the beginning, they start as a rideshare. Now many of them have their own food truck, their own stand anymore. So we create the first ecosystem based on loyalty, based on time, as you say, as quickness. You've been with them. That's the only way that you can engage with this perfect community.
Haley, so I wanted to talk about how regulation has been handled in the U.S. when it comes to the gig economy. Because in the scheme of things, we're talking about a relatively new industry with a government that's typically slow to bring regulation to new things.
Sure, so I should probably clarify. We run a rideshare service at Revel, but we utilize W-2 employees. Our thesis being there's a subset of New York City professional drivers that wanted that option. It didn't previously existed. The idea is not to displace the 1099 positions at other rideshare companies, just to provide another option. So, from our perspective, it is somewhat different, and probably, are less into the nuance of regulations, but I would say New York has been, pretty aggressive in regulating the industry. I think aside from Chicago, it is the only city that actually actively regulates, and there's a minimum wage, there's cost of living adjustments, and so in fact I think I am by no means an expert, but in certain regards 1099 work and rideshare work in New York City may be better than in other cities. And I think it did take a long time for the city to get it together, but they certainly seem to be there now. And then, of course, that said, there's, of course, a population that likes the reliability, the reliable wage, the access to benefits, and so that's kind of where we come in.
So they're really going into this, people starting out in gig work, maybe 10 years ago, there really wasn't any set rules or things that were protecting them.
Well, there still isn't really. I mean, we're all considered independent contractors, and that's what all gig companies want. I mean, we're seeing what's happening now in Minneapolis. There is an existing model in Seattle, Washington State, when it comes to regulations. I think New York City and Seattle are the two only cities that have some sort of benefits for independent contractor workers. There are many different types of legislation that's coming around, Chicago and Boston and Portland now, which I follow very closely. And we know what's happening in Minneapolis. So the second the drivers stand together and find a friendly city council here and we pass some laws, now Uber and Lyft are threatening to leave. And I love what I do because with our growth over the last year and a half, especially doing the live streams, I talk to thousands of drivers every single week, so I have the pulse of the drivers on a live basis, probably more than the companies themselves. And they tell me what they want. And they want to stay independent contractors, right? And for one reason or another, they may be profitable, they may not be profitable, but they like the flexibility, they like what Garrett said, instant pay, things like that. But there's a price to that. What am I exchanging that flexibility and freedom for? Am I exchanging that for sub-minimum wage earnings, no benefits, things like that, right? And ultimately, I think when we do our surveys, 85% want to stay independent contractors, which is exactly what the companies are saying, that we want all the drivers, couriers, stay independent contractors. But I think we're at a point that the pendulum has swung a little bit too far the company's way, and if it's legislation that's going to come around city by city, state by state, that's what they're going to face.
Right, so right now it's definitely on the companies themselves to attract these workers and to keep them. So I'm curious, what was the catalyst for change when you put the power in the gig workers' hands? And then also some of the things that we are seeing companies roll out.
Yeah, I mean, as far as loyalty, look, we're all out here, with a few exceptions, probably some retired folks or soccer moms or whatever. The full-time drivers out there trying to earn a living, right? We want to make money, and that's where my loyalty is going to go. The systems have been in place for Uber, Lyft, DoorDash. They all have certain incentives, and I have to chase those incentives, and that's where my loyalty stands. That's the name of the panel, right? Loyalty, and loyalty comes with dollars. I'm in it for me. I'm not in it for anything else. I'm in it to feed my family. I'm in it to pay my rent. And with that, if you're going to buy my loyalty, you got to pay me more. And that's where things are at. It's not like the old days, Wild West days, that I turn my app on and do a 3-mile, $50 trip nonstop. Now I got to watch my costs. My costs have gone up, so you have to buy my loyalty these days. You're just not going to be given. And is it going to be in the form of some benefits? Is it going to be in the form of higher pay? That's what the companies have to show you. Like our show says, show me the money. You got to show me the money to get my loyalty.
Yeah.
Well, I think you're hitting on something really interesting, which is there's full-time drivers where this is their sole focus, And then there's probably the 70 or 80% of people who are thinking about this as an addition or to support another priority, whether that's an additional job, additional education, taking care of their family. And what we find is across the board, whether it's part-time or full-time, earnings is number one. But then after that, the priorities and the focus for people who are doing it full-time and part-time start to vary. People who are doing it full-time, earnings number one, then stability in the paycheck, and then things like benefits really start to matter. I think a lot of the gig companies are doing some really cool things to make healthcare and some other insurance benefits more accessible and more affordable. And even as an independent contractor, it's easier now to go out and get those things today than it was a year ago and the year before that. But for people who are doing it part-time, and we've seen companies see if they can move workers from part-time independent contractor to W-2 employees, and largely they say, no, I don't want it, because they value earnings one, but flexibility is number two. So I think it's really just a recognition that different people want different things. It's tough to cater to all of that.
Yeah, I mean, when we run our surveys, there's three major issues that we face, and it's been the same for a long time. Earnings one, safety two, right? Flexibility comes into play a little bit here and there, but the third is unjust deactivations, meaning firing, basically. That's the new word in the gig economy for getting fired by an AI bot with a complaint from a passenger potentially. I do agree with Garrett, though. There's an 80-20 rule applies, right? 20% of the drivers are doing 80% of the trips. Those are the full-time grinders, and 80% are doing 20% of the trips. Those are the part-timers. So when we do run the survey, 85% say that they want to stay independent contractors, right? It's not because of loyalty, because it fits their lifestyle. It's the new economy. It's only 10 years old. It's not like gig economy. It's like decades old. Although there were self-employment way before the gig economy, right? There were other jobs. I mean, independent contractor, plumbers, air conditioning contractors, electricians, whatever. But the point, when he's talking about some healthcare benefits, flexibility, we have Prop 22 in California. I lived with it for the last 3 years. I think there are quite a bit of restrictions on it for the part-timers anyway, but for full-timers, he may be right. But lastly, when, these three things are at the top of the driver concerns for the last forever that I can remember, for the last 6 years I've been with the Rideshare guy. And they're always the same. And why are they staying the same? Right? I mean, that means it's not getting fixed. Not much is being done. And that's when legislation comes in. And I personally am not a huge fan of the government, don't get me wrong. But at some point, things have to move. And if that's the way to move, then that's going to be the way.
We probably see for people who are looking for a full-time job, benefits or lack of benefits is the number one concern. But the biggest concern for part-time and full-time seems to be gas costs. What do you hear on that front?
Yeah, we do agree. I mean, our costs, look, I get my back-end data from Ualett data, which is on the retail side. They look at fares, how much they have gone up since 2019. They have doubled. I mean, 50 to 70% nationwide Uber and Lyft fares have gone up. I'm sure you all are passengers on these platforms. And you're definitely paying 50 to 70% more. So out of that 50 to 70%, how much of that is going to the driver to get his loyalty is the question, right? Not much. And for sure, I mean, I live in California. I live with gas prices, high gas prices anywhere else in the country. And but there's other costs, right? All of the costs are on us as independent contractors. Like, well, we take the tool of our trade to work every day, which is our car. Well, set of tires prices have doubled over the last 4 years. Maintenance costs have gone up. Gas prices, obviously, the variable cost, but insurance has gone up quite a bit. So what I'm seeing in the community is when it comes to earnings, our earnings have really truly not been adjusted commensurate to inflation that we're seeing. Although, the macroeconomic conditions are a massive tailwind for the gig companies now. Because, like Garrett said, W-2s are not enough. Easy barrier to entry, upload some documents, go make a couple $100 extra a week. It fits the bill for a lot of people. But for full-timers, it's a really difficult situation at the moment.
Yeah, Ricky, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, there is something about those expenses. It's in our database, we have very specific data about how they, compared with the earnings, which are those areas that they spend more in the daily routine. It's one of them, it's very impressive, it's breakfast. A lot of rideshare gig workers are spend a lot of their earnings in breakfast. And the second one that really impressed us, it's parts. Parts became, I think Sergio mentioned that, part become like the most challenging, expensive for the rideshare industry, for the gig workers industry. And the third one that we are recognizing is the paying for the car, for your lease, or to try to move from X type of car you have to the next level. So I think that's something that all the people that work in the alternative lending for the gig industry need to focus on. And that's why we are very focused on that right now.
So obviously Revel is dealing in an entirely different space from like what we're talking about. So I'm curious some of the benefits that you are offering your drivers, and how you deal with things like raises, I don't know if there's bonuses, like things that you would find in a traditional 9-to-5 job.
Sure, I mean, just to disclose this, it's pretty interesting. We have a fairly low take-up of our benefits program. So our drivers are offered the same benefits that I am, you have to pay for them, and I think we're only hovering about 10%, which was interesting and surprising to us. In terms of everything else, we also work off an incentive. So, you know, you have your reliable wage, which you know you're gonna get no matter what. You know, there's passenger ratings, there is, you know, time to pick up and drop off. It's a very similar incentive structure that the gig companies use, just with that reliable wage, and including actually time of day.
Yeah. Why do you think it is that the take-up of the insurance, like the benefits, is so low?
I don't know. I think it's interesting to talk about New York City as it relates to rideshare. It seems, and this is just what we hear, to be like somewhat different than other markets. You have, I think, far more, if not a majority, professional driver versus in other locations. And the industry, you know, is really tenanted, it's really gig. I don't know if it goes back, you know, to the yellow cab or what, but you know, there are things in New York like the Black Car Fund, which provides certain services for gig workers. So I can't really tell you why exactly the take-up is low, but I think that, you know, it just seems to be how the industry is operating now.
So Ricky, you work with cash advances. So I'm wondering what that money has typically been used for, and if you saw a difference, you know, pre-pandemic, during pandemic, post-pandemic.
Yeah, pre-pandemic, everything was about car insurance and how I can pay for the rental car. Basically, it was like that. After the pandemic, everything changed because you just not had like a rideshare traditionally. Now you have a delivery app, drivers, and you need two different channels. For rideshare, it's more parts, as I said, insurance. Breakfast is one of the you know, account that they invest more. For delivery, it's more about their way to change from a motorcycle scooter to a car or to a food truck. The delivery industry, the workers think always to have their own independent business. And if you go to the freelancers, they spend in different categories like equipment, like even clothes, travel, but that's how the independent work works right now. Those are the sources that people are investing more of their money.
Have we seen, I mean, similar to kind of how Revel is doing this, have we seen these large big companies increase benefits? I guess one option could be, you know, integrating with newer platforms that are really focused on benefits. Someone would like to take that.
Yeah, I don't know the names of all the different platforms, but I think I is one that DoorDash may work with. I've I've seen integrations to advertise Stride Health, which allows individuals to go into the marketplace through ACA or Obamacare and get a plan. I do think it can be very valuable for people who are doing this, again, as their full-time job, but probably 60 or 70% of people are doing this as a second job, and they see it as way better than the next best job they could get if they need to earn an additional $10,000 or $20,000, or they want to go back, get additional education, but they have to continue to provide for their family, they continue to have expenses, maybe they need to pay for the certification or boot camp. Those people, by and large, they tend to have benefits already through their current employer, or their spouse. And so I think for maybe 10 to 20% of people it matters, but for 70 or 80% of people it's probably taken care of already.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, get health benefits through their work, regular jobs, W-2s, let's say, so they don't have the need. But for the full-timer, I think the full-timers are losing out on this is for the fact that the companies are pushing Prop 22-like loans in a lot of different states, which is portable health benefits, things like that, but it comes with so many restrictions that if you get sick, God forbid, a couple of quarters in a week, now you have to drive so much more to make up the time. So it comes with a lot of carrot and stick kind of games. For full-timers, I believe they need to get paid more. Companies need to buy these people loyalty. They're doing 80% of the trips on your platform. I mean, look, we all use these apps as a convenience. You can push a button all you want. Somebody has to do the work. Somebody has to bring you the burrito. Somebody has to shop for you. Somebody has to take you to the airport. You can push the buttons until you blue in the face. Without the driver, there is no gig companies. I mean, do they admit it? They don't admit it, it's their problem. But to me, time has proven with being a gig worker myself, and as well as a consumer, I'm seeing degrading car quality, lower driver quality, right? And I'm paying a lot more for these services. So as far as a consumer, I'm actually kind of not too happy about the gig economy, but as a driver, we want to stay independent. We want to get paid enough so we can buy our own healthcare. We don't want to be a burden to the system. We do, a lot of the drivers I talk to, they're on state-funded benefit, healthcare systems, right? Medi-Cal, and we want to get off that table. We want to earn enough so we can buy our own healthcare, right? We will buy our own benefits, do our own 401k. We don't need other things. We're smart people, On our channel, we teach quite a bit about retirement and finances and how to manage all that. But to us, it comes with pay. You have to pay me enough for me to be able to afford all those things.
Yeah, so you believe it's less about working with these third-party companies to give you, I don't know, just some type of advice or different benefits, and it just comes down to pay.
Absolutely. If you pay me enough, I can afford all of it myself. That's why I chose to be an independent contractor.
I think Sergio's call out is really poignant that, the flywheel or the network effects that have driven a lot of these marketplace businesses to be some of the fastest growing companies in history is really powered by the drivers. They're the key in starting that flywheel. If you want to have faster pickups, faster deliveries, if you want to have more reliability, less surge proximity, you need to get more drivers. I think drivers really are the key to making it the obvious and the best choice for consumers. That said, and Haley, maybe you have some insight into this, let's say a full-time driver working 8 hours a day, are they worth twice as much to the platforms as two drivers working 4 hours? Or are they worth 1.5 times or 1.25 times? Because if you're thinking about picking people up, to get them home from work, or doing deliveries when people are ordering food after dinner, one full-time driver can only do one delivery during those peak times. Two part-time drivers can do 2 deliveries during those peak times. And so I'd be very interested.
I fully understand that, but what's happening is that with the churn and burn that we experienced in the gig economy over the last 10 years, the average length of a gig worker's lifespan, let's say not physical, but on platforms is 6 to 8 months. They come and go. It's a very transitory crowd, right? And the full-timers have been there for years. I talked to drivers that have been on the platform for 8-10 years, right? And what you said about, should they get paid twice as much, but they're still going to be able to do the one trip. The problem is not that. The problem is due to the fact that it's an incentive-based system these days. In the old days, it used to be, we were just like cabs. We had a dollar amount for miles, we had a dollar amount for time. Time and distance was it. Now, last year and a half, they have something, black box algos called upfront fares, which we have no clue why the fare is what it is for that trip, right? So, my concern is the full-timers are depending on those incentives. And as I was a full-time driver once, 40% of my income used to come from incentives, but I have no control over that incentive. They're called quests, they're called ride challenges. Well, when they get cut off because we have hit such massive oversaturation of drivers around the nation that the companies don't have to pay for it. They have all the drivers voluntarily driving anyway. Why do I have to incentivize anybody to drive? When I'm not short of drivers coming out of the pandemic, it was completely the different story, right? They were incentivizing us to get out there. I think what they can do is, for the full-timers, show them the money more than the part-timer, because they should be more valuable to your platform. And I do my stupid little surveys when I'm driving, which is every weekend. I ask my passengers, I go, do you know who the CEO of Uber is? Do you know who the CEO of Lyft is? They have no clue who they are. But you know who they know? They know me. I'm the face of Uber. I'm the face of Lyft for that 15 minutes that I have you in my car. And if I'm not feeling treated well, then the passenger is not going to have a good experience in my car. So it's all kind of relative, but I think the heavy bonus structure incentives should be geared more towards those full-time drivers than the part-timers.
What is the churn rate for a Revel driver? Like or the retention rate? Like how long do they stay on the platform working? I'm sure it varies, but is there an average there?
It varies. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there's churn. I think if I'm remembering correctly, it's lower than we were told is the case for the other companies. Again, New York is also like kind of a weird environment. There's a cap on vehicle licenses, so it's not like anyone can just go out on the road and drive. It's sort of an outlier, but the churn, we have churn. I think it is a new business model, and we are actually tapping existing TLC, that's our regulator, licensed drivers. So we're not seeking to, flood the pool of drivers. We're just seeking to take those drivers that want our business model. And not everybody does, right? So people, this has been an industry that has been 1099. And not everybody wants to show up for a shift. That's what W-2 employment is. And that's totally understandable. It's something, you don't really learn, I guess, until you try it. So I think our rate of churn is somewhat lower because people, generally speaking, know what they're getting. Also, they're more than welcome to work for the other platforms, when they're off shift. Our cars are bright and branded. They're can't be used for Uber or Lyft, but so I think for these reasons, maybe our rate of churn is slightly lower.
Yes, and our database is 150,000 users nationwide, and it's something that probably needs to concern about from the platform perspective, because just 15% of those drivers stay for 4 to 6 months in just one platform. They rotate every 2 months from one platform to another. That means their customer support, their care, they don't care. That's the problem. They don't care about those drivers. And the ecosystem right now is too big. Nobody's loyalty anymore in just one platform. Before the pandemic, you can see a driver that stayed for a year just doing Uber or just doing Lyft. After the pandemic, everything changed and nobody stayed more than 2-3 months in the platform and probably going to switch to another.
Yeah, I think churn is really interesting. We sort of see the recipe for churn as a function of education. Do you know how to be successful with the platform? And in some markets, it can be really challenging. If you're doing food delivery in San Francisco, some apartment buildings are really hard to deliver to. Which restaurants have the food ready? Where can I park? And if you don't have education on how to do it, when to do it, where you should be, it's really easy to have a poor experience. I think the second big factor that goes into churn is poor support. And Sergio, I'd be interested in hearing your take on this. But I
really
think,
want to do that?
yeah, but I mean, quite frankly, I think companies spend too much money with us recruiting new drivers because they don't give enough support to their existing drivers.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you know, we do again more surveys, and it's proven that the bottom 10% in one city, same city, top 10% drivers make 2 or 3x of what a bottom 10%er does. I'm a top 1% driver in my city because I know my city well, I know the rhythm of my city well. It's like anything else, right? What you put into something is what you're going to get out of it. Just because it's gig work, just because it's simple, just because it's point A to point B driving, doesn't mean you cannot have more success. And that's why we're so good at what we do on our channel. We try to educate you, we try to make you understand, you know, work smart, not hard, or, you know, you have to know when and where demand is going to be, and truly the apps are doing it. But for example, you know, talk about churn, right? In my pocket, I have an offer from Lyft to refer a driver today that Lyft will pay me $1,000 for. And Lyft will pay that specific driver $700. That's $1,700 I refer a driver. Would I rather drive for a week, bust my butt, or refer somebody? That's the churn and burn, right? And I do understand the company's point of view, right? They have to create enough density to get everybody picked up in 5 minutes or less, because if it's not Uber, they're gonna go to Lyft, okay? Because the passenger doesn't have loyalty either. If they're not gonna do it on Uber Eats, they're gonna do it on DoorDash. There's no loyalty. You know, everybody's looking for the bang for the buck. And to me, it shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. I mean, LA, I know like the back of my hand. Why do we need more drivers? We all can right now turn our passenger apps on. There will be 8 Uber cars and 8 Lyft cars in this room, literally. So why do we need more drivers, right? Cap the drivers a little bit. Because the more they onboard drivers, right, the pie is staying the same size because growth has slowed down at these companies to a single-digit level because there's such massive scale already. Well, now we have more mouths to feed, right? So my sliver of the pie is getting less and less, which is something called utilization rate. I'm sitting in my car watching YouTube for half the hour because I'm not getting enough requests now to make money. That's my other enemy on top of everything else. So support, look, I lovingly, I talk to Uber and Lyft a lot, and when he said it, so I'm gonna say, I call it black hole support. That's what it is. I go bang my head to the wall as support to get my $2 cancellation fee, quite often for an hour, with an AI chatbot going back and forth. And, you know, I was like thinking about the business end of it, right? So in that hour, why don't you just pay me without resistance, my lousy $2 cancellation fee, and let me go drive for that hour? Lyft, Uber will make more money because I'll do more trips for them, and I'll make more money. I mean, talk about efficiency, right? It's like, I don't know why they're doing it. Like, the support is horrible.
I will say that the most consistent feedback we get from drivers that were driving from the other platforms before is that we have a driver ops team, and so it's run by our former head of customer service. You know, we used to run a shared moped service, and so we take that sort of customer service and put it for drivers. And so that is just like, you might hate us for some other reason, but across the board, the fact that you get a human being all the time on the phone is huge. And then also, you know, when there are disputes between passengers and drivers, you know, we have video evidence, and it's been our understanding from our drivers that because you can't get in touch with a company to refute something that a passenger said, they're kicked off the platform for however long, if not permanently, whereas we can address the issue immediately. We have the footage, we look at the footage. And so that does seem to be a really strong value prop.
I think the next panel is about safety. I think it is, I'm not sure, but there is one. I think Uber and Lyft should pay for dash cams for every single one of their drivers in their cars.
I feel like they would argue that they have the phone integrations, you know, the phone.
Not good enough. I tried it. I have it on my Uber app. It's very dark. Not everybody's phone is the latest bells and whistles. The recording inside the cabin is a must, especially if there is a fraudulent activity both ways, from rider to passenger, passenger to rider. I think that would solve a lot of problems. As far as support is concerned, we don't have to create a ticket for it. I mean, right? I mean, I do understand scale is the enemy. Uber did 2.7 billion trips last quarter, globally. This is fact, it's from their earnings report. Of course, if I took 2.7 billion steps going this way, I'm definitely going to break a hip and a leg and something else probably. So in that scale, things will happen. And support tickets probably go through the roof. And you know, I don't know how they can, they have to automate it obviously. They cannot assign a human to every problem, right? But I think they could do a better job though.
So I think we're running up on time here, but just to wrap things up, I'd love to get everyone's, you know, one thing that they think should be implemented or improved by companies, by gig companies to improve loyalty. So whether that's like money, better customer support, just things like that, one thing.
Loyalty, show me the money. You gotta show me the money. And you know, I drove for Uber first time in about 4 months because I had a bonus. And it made it palatable to do a $5 trip for 15 minutes. Loyalty is all about money when it comes to me. Look, there are a lot of different opinions about this. To the driver, full-time driver, is money. To the retired who's on Social Security already, he wants to get out of the house, doesn't want to fight with the wife, you know, get out, do a few hours, different stories. Soccer mom, drop the kids off at school, go do a couple, 3 hours, all different stuff. But the grinders are really, really in a tough situation, especially in massive markets due to oversaturation. It's all about money. Show me the money.
I will defer to the expert, but also it's really consistent with what we hear. We have grinders that work for us, they may be also working for other platforms in off time, but it's showed them the money. And then, you know, we have a core driver who likes the reliability, and, you know, we love them too, but it definitely, what you were saying, echoes what we hear too.
Well, the money industry, so money's first, definitely. But the only way that you can differentiate yourself from the competition is with customer support. People want to hear people. And we are example of that. Our competition probably is good as us, but our secret sauce is that customer support. So if those companies bet on customer support, definitely is going to be a win for them.
I think related, but as the saying goes, a stitch in time. I think many of the support problems and early life cycle churn can be solved with better first trip education. You know, for example, we talk to a lot of people who maybe they're single parents, they want to pay for their daughter to go to summer camp, or they need to pay down student loans, and they're able to drive while their kid's at school. So they drop their kid off at 7 a.m., they're going to pick their kid up at 3 p.m. All right, I'm going to do food delivery. When should I start? Is 7 a.m. a good time? Like I'm willing to work 2-3 hours a day on this. If I get started and I try to do deliveries from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m., I don't make much money. If I'm willing to work from 11 to 2 p.m., all of a sudden I have the earnings in place that make this exciting for me to continue. If I know how to do it, if I've had a chance to have a conversation, to ask questions to someone, get my concerns addressed. How do I stay safe? Do I need a dash cam? How do I contact support? What do I need to be successful? I really think many of the reasons that people don't find success and they don't stick with the platforms can be solved by having a real conversation ahead of time to make sure they have the answers to be successful. So
I agree with him. You should watch Rideshare guy a lot more often.
oh, we're fans.
Yeah, I mean, you know, we try our best, but you know, there's 3 million Uber drivers, 1 million Lyft drivers, I don't know how many million DoorDashers, Grubhubbers, whatever they are. I mean, education is key. I 100% agree with them, right? Do something, do it well. Don't just willy-nilly get out there, turn the app on, and go, oh, I mean, you make some money. I'm like, no, man, and you're not going to make any money, but you're going to suffer, and you're going to quit. We don't want quitting. We want them to stay and learn and enjoy the job. It's a fun job to do. It really is meeting people, seeing new places in your city. It's an awesome thing to do. But then when you're not making money and you're not feeling safe, none of these things, then they quit. That's when the, but yeah, please tell them to watch Rideshare. Come on.
Well, let them know.
Yeah.
You're talking to 20 million people. I mean, come on.
Coming back to the main thing though, is this 35th birthday, 36?
You never ask a lady their age, so it's like.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you all for attending. Thank you, Harry and Jonah and everyone for setting this up. I really appreciate it. And everyone tell Sergio happy birthday when we leave.